Okay, that's the word on oil. Look at the market. What looked like a feeble start has actually turned tide for the worse. We're at 10,784 and it's a dip of actually 71 points. The breadth extremely bleak, 130 points in the red, or rather 130 stocks in the red. ICICI Bank, NBCC, NMDC. And NMDC, by the way, was the biggest gainer on the metal index yesterday. Yes Bank down 4% and REC also lost about 2.6% or so. There's Innocent Bank also, which is in the red. There's Glenmark also in the red, and HDFC Bank also in the red. But let's take it across to Sunil Subramaniam, chat a little bit more about this market. And Sunil, just when you thought things were getting better, comes the crude googly, and there we have it. We're back to square one, literally.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this was a black swan event that nobody anticipated, and but I think it's a short-term shock, and which should dissipate. Because if at all, I know there is never a good time for terrorism strikes, but if at all there was a time that a strike could happen, it should be this, because world demand is slowing down, India is slowing down, so oil demand is going to drop. So at a certain time, the shock will not have as much impact. If everybody was in a growth phase, then demand for oil and oil will have really spiked. So I think out of all the bad, I think it's not a bad time to have had that done, and I think there is enough supply. I think I was just listening to the oil expert you were talking to, and he was predicting $40 to $50 over a 5-year time frame. So clearly oil is not going to be the biggest problem for the world or for India.
I think 5 years. 5 years is 365 into 5 years, that many days away. Right now it's about Monday becoming Tuesday, Tuesday a sell-off, Wednesday coming back, Thursday becoming bad. You have to deal with day to day.
Yes. But this quarter is very crucial, Nigam, because the festival season has to be good for the economy to revive. And the key there, I think, is farm output, because that's going to determine rural economic sentiments on purchases. So I think the next couple of months, watching the festival season says is the most important item on everybody's agenda.
Just want to cut to that footage which is currently playing on the right of your screen, because Defence Minister Rajnath Singh is all set to now fly in the ingenious light combat aircraft at the HAL airport, which is the Hindustan Aeronautics Airport in Bangalore, and soon he's going to be setting flight on Tejas, which we will cut to those pictures in just a second.
All right. Sunil, coming back to the markets, I mean, we've had now one other event out of the way, Fed pretty much in line, though of course, Wall Street's disappointed with 25 basis points. Possibly, perhaps, maybe one other announcement by the finance minister, but for the most part, I think she's discussed some of the key sectors that they're looking to support. What next, Sunil? There doesn't seem to be any respite in the near term.
I think next from the government side would be two things. One is there's a huge amount of pile-up of money which the government owes to contractors and suppliers to the government. I think release of that money would be a big help. The second is the government spending. You see, the government spending has to be oriented towards the rural economy, and now it's past the time for just talk, and I think they need to actually demonstrate that. They probably need to give some consumption boost, by giving away some more money. I saw the Narega, they may now link it to inflation, but that's no big deal. When the inflation is so low, that's not really going to make much difference. But it's government spending which I think is the key. They have to spend, and I think a small slippage in the fisc should be tolerable in this year.
Sunil, last week it appeared that markets were nearing a valuation bottom, but because of crude, the reset has happened. So can we safely say that all hopes of a valuation bottom in the short term have got dismissed, and if at all, if you have to really near a valuation bottom, it will only happen after the festival season or after the Q2 earnings, because markets would wait to hear from managements how deep the damage is, how big is the slowdown, and then assess the fresh course?
Absolutely, I couldn't agree with you more, because it's not just the management talk, it's also the impact on the bottom lines of the O&D quarter, which is the festival season quarter, which will start coming out from mid-January, and then you have the budget on 1st February. So I don't see the markets really going anywhere to get a long-term direction till all of these events pass through. So my sense is mid-Feb, starting with the budget, is when we will see a fresh direction and where the valuation play can come in and there will be interest in the market. But the next 3 months are clearly wait and watch for every market participant.
What does one do in the meantime, Sunil? We're talking about 5-6 months away now. What does one do in the meantime? Where would you buy at lower levels with an outlook to perhaps a revival, whether it be in consumption, demand, the economy? What would be looking attractive to you currently?
See, I don't think anything is attractive. The best pick for me would be the private sector banks, because if at all there is a pickup in the festival season demand and NBFCs are not there in a big way, I expect the private sector banks to step in and take advantage of in the transmission which is slowly beginning to happen. So if at all, I think then a safer bet would be the private sector bank. I admit that the valuations are quite high, but I would still say they are the safest bet in the current play, because even if there is a corporate revival, government spends on infrastructure, I think even that ticket lending, it's a private sector corporate-oriented banks which should pick it up. So I would say the safe play is private sector banking at this point in time, number one. Number two, I still see the services holding up. So I think broadly financial services and general services is probably a safer bet than the manufacturing. And consumption, clearly FMCG, we have to wait for the numbers to come out before you take a call on FMCG.
Sunil, let's talk about a space where you have a very large exposure, cement. What is the update on that space? Because economy is slowing down, monsoons getting delayed, construction activity gets delayed, real estate is in a slumber. I've been told that it's pouring in Chennai. I can share with you it's pouring in Mumbai. That means a lot of construction activity is going to get delayed. What impact do you think that will have on cement demand?
I think that in the short term there could be challenges, but I still feel, Nikunj, that the government can't delay their spending too much longer. I think they have to come in and spend, and I think cement will be the first thing which will pick up. And cement, again, Nikunj, as we are aware, it's a very geographical story. So I think monsoons are there in some part, but where is the real construction activity going to happen? I would say it's still the Andhra, the east of India, where I don't think the monsoon is really a big impact. So I would still say cement, if you study the real geographic place, there is still pockets. The price differential between markets is huge. And so companies which are positioned in the right markets are still good picks. So I would say that while in the next 1-2 months, yes, prices could be a little bit under pressure in terms of cement prices, I still feel that these stocks are good picks in the long run, because whether it's government spending on infrastructure, whether it's other housing, the government's program on affordable housing, anywhere the cement which is going to be the product which is commonly needed. So I would still remain bullish on the cement exposure despite what you say in terms of the immediate short-term future.
Sunil, for this year is Nifty gains for 2019 gone. Mid caps have not made money in 3 years. How would you convince a buyer? How would you convince a long-term investor not to lose calm, not to lose patience? Because for the long-term investor, the housewife or the or the wife is always insisting that SIP में पैसा नहीं लगा बन रहा मगर गोल्ड 40,000 है.
For me, the trick, Nikunj, and I've shared this with you earlier, is to use the rolling returns methodology. Because if you look at anything from a point to point, because we are at a low point today, everything is looking bad. But if you look at the rolling returns and you say that in 5 years, right, nobody's ever lost money in an actively managed mutual fund, even in the mid-cap and small-cap space, right? Is that if you hang in between 1 year, yes, there is a probability of 20-25% of a loss in 1 year, but that's probably what has probably happened in, let's say, mid-caps now. But if you hold on for anything longer than 3.5 to 5 years, your chances of losing capital erode and your chance of positive gains dramatically rise. So I think this is a good time as any to take rolling returns and say, look, forget about the timing of the market. Don't look at it now when everything is looking bad. Look at it that independent of market timing, these are the markets, whether it's the mid-cap index, the small-cap index, have delivered returns and funds have delivered. So I think this is a good time as any to use the rolling returns to say that there is light at the end of the tunnel and don't go by today's views.
Not really sounding so positive going ahead. But Sunil, at least you're calling a spade, which is good to hear. In that sense, it's clarity. Anything you feel could be sort of a silver lining at this point? I know you talked about perhaps, things like easing payments. Anything else, particularly from a government standpoint, that you feel could really help push things at the moment?
I think what's happening, and I've been in touch with some international, participants recently, and what's happening internationally is a very interesting trend. I think very, very quickly, all the central banks of the world and the advanced countries are coming to realize that they've reached the end of the tether in terms of the monetary policy and the interest rate policy, and they haven't worked really, really well. So I think everywhere the focus is shifting to the fiscal policy of the respective governments in pushing, and which means that economies in the Europe now are already stretched in terms of fiscal deficit. They are going to probably increase that to boost demand. So why I'm saying this from an India perspective is that this tolerance of fiscal slippages, if it starts in the Western world, the rating agencies would look much more kindly at India. And for me, the key need of the hour is to help with the fiscal deficit. I think we need government spending in a big time in the right areas where it creates incomes, non-farm incomes in rural India, where it creates, capital goods demand, mid-cap cement demand and steel demand. So I think the government spending is a key, and I think the positive news there is the worldwide. How governments are going to be spending, and so India's spending shouldn't come as a big shock or a surprise. And I would like the government to bite that bullet, to actually go out and say, okay, not 3.3 this year, given the whole overall scenario. And see, the RBI governor is also admitting that they got the growth projections wrong. Okay, so to what extent was their monetary policy based on a wrong growth projection? Obviously, the results are there to see. So to me, the key action is that the government has to spend, and the whole Keynesian theory of capital multiplier by the government spending, I think is the key need of the hour, and I hope the government does that sooner than later.
Thank you for joining us. You braved your way through when it was stormy and rainy in Chennai, so thank you very much. Trust me, we do it on a daily basis in Bombay. It's stormy and it's
Today also is going to be much like that.
The schools are shut.
Yeah. Schools
are shut. My son's gone to the school, maybe some miscommunication there. He's gone to school. Half the schools are shut, half the schools are not shut. One of those.
But that notification I think came last night itself that the schools are going to be shut. But not for private schools, maybe it's a different thing.
So, that's Mumbai for you.
All right, let's also now welcome in our next guest. We've got Prashant Tripathi.